into your actual practice. And to that end, the first thing that we're going to talk about is leadership. Most physicians, most in healthcare, do not have a lot of leadership experience when you get out into practice. Yes, during residency, you're going to be in charge of leading the medical students. But their paychecks are not dependent on you. And at the end of the day, they don't answer, you're not their boss. When you get out into DPC, you're the leader. And so it takes a lot to figure out how to be a good leader, especially as you grow your team. Not only are they invested in your clinic, they're motivated by you, they're getting their paycheck and their livelihood, and they're buying their groceries because you are leading them and you're employing them. And it can take a lot to figure out how to do that. And so Dr. Andrew Anderson is going to come up on stage in just a minute. He owns Kaya Health, and he has started and grown an entire team around his DPC. And so he's going to talk about leadership, and he's going to talk about culture, and how to really make it so that everybody is working towards the same mission, and that you, as the leader, are able to count on others in your organization to keep things going and be inspired by you. So please welcome to the stage, Dr. Anderson.
All right, good morning. This is super cool. I love this venue. This is really neat. So I literally woke up. I'm from out east. I'm in Virginia, and in a different time zone, and residency broke my circadian rhythm, so I always wake up early anyway. So I was up at 3:20 this morning, and I woke up because I had this dream, literally had a dream that because of all the delays and everything out east with travel, that I didn't have my clothes. And so I showed up here with a t-shirt from college and gym shorts. And so thankfully that's not the case. And like every other dude that has shared the stage with me, I got the memo, I'm wearing the uniform, I've got the blue suit and the white shirt. So, I'm there. Who here was affected by this storm, or travel and anything? Anybody? Wow, I'm so glad there's not many of you. My brother who came with me, we ended up staying a lot longer at the airport than I initially imagined. We were in Charlotte. That was a connection for us in North Carolina. And ever since the pandemic, airports have become kind of like a porta potty in my mind. I get in and get out before I get a disease. And and then, we have a delay. And the whole objective of an airport is to get out of it. And you go there and you go straight to the departure gate, then you get out and there's 1,000 signs telling you how to get to baggage claim and get out of there. And then they announce, there's a delay, there's another delay, and I felt like my prison sentence was being extended. And my brother points out oh my gosh, this looks like the beginning of a Christmas movie, bad weather, Christmas is canceled, things are gonna be bad. And that's what it looked like. We had this stranger convention that was happening in the airport, and everybody, there's just more and more people, and they're gathering, and they're kind of hunkering down for the night because we're gonna be stuck there, it looks like. And so we're walking around, killing time, and I see some people working. I'm like, oh my gosh, what crime did you commit in a former life to be a pretzel shop salesman in an airport? It just looks miserable. This poor guy, he's just doling out pretzels to these people who are angry and hungry, but they don't want to pay a ton, so they're going for the $4 pretzels, and they're not happy, he's not happy, and so kind of that's what I want to talk about today is employees. Phil mentioned leadership, and that's a huge part of it, and it comes to the people who we lead. And so I want to talk about how we can create a great environment so our dear employees aren't like the pretzel shop guy that is just so miserable and his final destination is the airport. He never gets to leave, he never gets to go anywhere. And so, let's see, I switched up some of the things that I was talking about because of Dr. Mayer's talk on leadership yesterday. And I want to talk about when I was in residency. It was towards the end. I'm from Virginia, my wife's from Idaho. We looked all over the country as to where to set up camp. And we were like, hey, let's move back to Virginia. Let's live out in the country a little bit. And so we had this romantic view of what it would be like. So we bought 6.1 acres out of the city a little bit. We're in a town of 80,000 people. We're outside of there. And it was fun, but it loses a little bit of the glimmer and glow every spring when I go out to the shed. And in the South, we call it a weed whacker. And I get the weed whacker and I wrestle with this thing and think some words that maybe I shouldn't. And, you know, I'm like, why don't you just, like, take care of yourself? You know, this is what I thought last time, because the thing never wants to start. And I've gone through many models of it, and it just never works. And the goal is to have something that works and fixes itself. The goal in any business, and for us, our practices, is to have a well-oiled machine. And we want something more than that. And to explain that further, I was reminded of a joke that I read in a Reader's Digest that I literally pulled off my mother-in-law's kitchen table 20 years ago. And it was a story about a heart surgeon, and he takes his motorcycle to the mechanic, and he says, here, can you fix this? And the mechanic does so, and the mechanic says to the surgeon, hey, you know, you and I pretty much do the same thing. We open it up, we take out the parts that are worn out, we replace them, we clean things up, put it back together, and send people on their way. So why do you get paid the big bucks? And then so the surgeon says, with a little bit of a smile, yeah, well, I do it with the engine still running. And so that, you know, there's a big difference. And having a well-oiled machine is good, and that's what we want. But as the mechanic can point out, as my dead weed whacker can point out, it takes a lot of effort. And to have an organism that heals itself and manages homeostasis on its own, that's what you want. That does require more effort. To explain this further, my wife and I were talking at the table just a few months ago. To set the scene, I'm here, table's here, she's here, table's here, and our 4-year-old daughter's playing, I think she was drawing, on the other end of the table. And my wife is talking to me, and without skipping a beat, right as a glass got knocked over by our toddler, it rolled, and my wife just does this no-look grab. And it was the coolest thing. I was like, wow, I'm married to Black Widow. And so she was like pretty thrilled about this too. She's like, did you see that? She turned to her other kid, did you see that? And she's like, that was, and this is what she said, that was the ultimate ninja move, the no-look catch. And I was like, that was pretty sexy. That was neat. And so my daughter has no idea that this happened. And we're all sitting there like watching just like something amazing happen. And that, if we continue the analogy of a living organism, is what we're going for, is the ultimate ninja move, the no-look catch. And to explain what it means is, you know, if you look at yourself as the boss, you are the brain or the eyes sometimes. And if you see something happen, you tell the other part of the body, you know, our business or practice, you know, go fix that thing, catch that glass before it breaks, and, you know, report what happened. But the no-look catch is what you're going for in a well-run, living organism practice business. And so it is when a part of the business recognizes something's wrong, fixes the problem immediately before the brain really knows about it. And so that's what we're shooting for, and that's what I want to teach us about today. And so the no-look catch, I wanted to give some examples of that, and I just, you know, bring from my experience, and I'm going to read this because I wrote it down because I didn't want to forget anybody. And I tried to keep these all within the last 60 days, just to show that, like, this isn't just cherry picking. It's when I was out of town, Julie in and Carrie, our COO and lead nurse, they took a dizzy patient home because she was too dizzy to drive, and that was when I was out of town. Laura, a nurse, Diana, a nurse practitioner, learning about a tragic situation of one of the patients, and they went and bought food and made food, and then drove an hour just to get to their house to deliver the food, all on their own. And then Dee, she's one of our nurses, she had some extra time. She noticed a hole that got punched in the wall by like a chair where a patient sat back too fast. And so she spackled it and sanded it and painted it, like all on her own. And that was just last month. And then Beth, she's my assistant. Last week, she came in on Saturday on her own. I mean, she texted me, she's like, hey, I'm coming on Saturday, so I can. And she put up a cabinet so that we could like declutter some of the other parts of the office. And then Lori, my personal nurse, she was going out for breast cancer surgery, but there was something going on with the patient and she wanted to make sure it got taken care of. So even though she is going out for a major surgery, which is pretty scary, and she made sure that she took care of this patient and gave them her personal cell phone number and was good on that offer and did several phone calls while she's recuperating on her couch with her dog. And they did this all on their own. And so if this sounds like bragging, it is. It is bragging on them, and they've done this all on their own. But here's the big question in all caps. How do we do that? And okay, this is the part where it gets interactive. This is a quote. It sounds like it's from a fortune cookie, but I think you guys are all familiar with it. So I'm going to say the majority of the quote, and then I'm going to have you, like out loud, say the last word. And so you out loud, say the last word. So it's something to the effect of, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is, yes, now, today. And so when we hear that quote, it's usually talking about, like a call to action. Let's do something now, act now. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the first part. We're going to talk about 20 years ago. I think, and stay with me on this, that we're in the 20 years ago phase of DPC, of even our own practice. I mean, I would say almost everybody here has been in practice in DPC for less than 5 years. Has anybody gone more than 5 years? So a few folks, but everybody else, less than that. And so we are in that phase where we are making the foundation. It's 20 years ago, at least in DPC, and I submit in a lot of our personal practices. So we can do things now that that makes a difference. So I want to talk about tech startups. There's a lot that you can learn about businesses, even if yours is really small, from Harvard Business Review. I recommend reading it every once in a while. It'll put you to sleep most of the time. But if you're awake at 3:20 in the morning in a hotel in Denver, it's a good read. And so we're going to talk about tech startups. Back in the 90s, when tech startups were a real big thing and Silicon Valley was becoming known as Silicon Valley, they started tracking a little over 200 businesses. And these businesses were growing rapidly. And it was this kind of petri dish of sorts to see how things worked. And so they followed them for over a decade. Some of them are actually still following for certain things. And they looked at, amongst many other things, how they went about hiring people. And so what I want to talk to you about, to look at the tree analogy again, is you want fruit, you want good fruit, you want people that are going to help your patients, going to help you, you want to help them. So instead of focusing on the fruit, I want us to focus on the seed. And so they looked at, in the Harvard Business Review, at these 200 plus businesses, and they looked at the 3 models that they recognized that kind of surfaced for how they hire. Let's see how this thing works. Okay, that's a cool stat that I'm not even going to talk about. But this is what they did. And so they looked at the 3 models. And so what they call the STAR model, it's essentially a merit-based model. So it's, you're the top of your class, you got all these awards, we want you because you're top of your class and got all these awards. Second one is what they call, in the study, the professional model. And that is, they hire based on skill set. We need somebody that does this very specific skill, and you fit the bill, so you, sir, are hired. And so that's what they call the professional model, but it's skill-based. And then the last one they call the commitment model, and that one is value-based. And that's where they take the values that people share, and they hire based on that almost exclusively, regardless, but not completely, of skill sets and merit. Again, they're not just hiring people who don't have a clue at all about what they're doing, but they found that over 300% more likely to succeed were the businesses that did this commitment model, that hired almost exclusively off of shared values. Google is one of those that did that in the very beginning when there were like 12 people. And so it has a lot less to do with credentials and a lot more to do with what they value. I want to talk about a few specific examples because it doesn't make a ton of sense until you see it in person. So this is Julie. She was a PT for 25 years. That's all she did. She was a mom for a while. She took a break. And then after that, she went right back to PT. She graduated from Emory back in the day, and she was doing PT back before women did in a lot of the ways that she was. And she's okay with me sharing this. She was a patient of our office. And all of a sudden, I started seeing these Facebook posts that she's making on, we have like a recommendation page or something on Facebook. It's like, where do I get a good plumber? Or how can I find this and that for my child? And she started posting things on there. Not once, not twice, not thrice, several times. And she would really prop us up online. And it was clear that she understood our model, why we did things, and that she was excited about it. And so I reached out to her, and she was very surprised. And I was like, hey, I've got an idea. She's like, yeah, tell me more. It's like, how about you be our chief operating officer? And she was pretty taken aback by that. And she said over and over, I'm not an expert in that. I don't know anything about this. I'm a PT, and that's all that I do. But she totally understood what we did, and more importantly, why we do it. And she has done a dynamite job for the last 2 years. And so that is an example of hiring based on values and not a lot else. To point it out, like, she is a awesome human being, and she's done great in several different things in her life, but the exact skill set that we were looking for, that wasn't her. That's not something she possessed. Here's the other one. This is a story where I opened my practice out of desperation. I was like, I am depressed, unfortunately suicidal because of my other job, working for the man, and it was awful, and I heard the words direct primary care in that order, and 93 days later, opened up a practice. Like, I Zoomed, and I had no money, and so I opened up in an old Pilates studio, and I was putting down the flooring like the weekend before we opened up, because I didn't have a job. And so I was trying really hard to make sure I could make money for my 4 kids and wife and everything. And so I was tired after doing this for about 9 hours. I went to the cafe two doors down. I was hungry, again, tired, and I went and I looked at the prices, and I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot afford anything in here. And so I just sat there, and I got a drink, and I just sat, and I was like tired, trying to keep my eyes open, and I see this 20-something-year-old redhead just running the joint. She was saying hi to people, checking on people's checks here, checking on their food there, bringing up things there, and just doing it all with a smile and about 1,000,000 miles a minute. I was like, wow, she's a really hard worker. And fast forward 2 years, we had, like, she would come to our office and deliver food and things like that. I had a paycheck at the time. And then ultimately one thing led to another, and now she's my personal assistant for 3 years now, and she does our accounts. And I text her, like, hey Beth, can you tell me how much money you recouped for us in the last 12 months? And she sent me a text yesterday. It was like, hey, this is the updated amount. So $31,000 that she brought back to our office just because she is dogged in what she does. And she's the nicest human being. She could like come up and slap you in the face and you'd be like, thank you, that was a wonderful slap in the face. Like, she's just so nice. And this is her and her husband exactly a week ago, like almost to the minute. Her showing up on a Saturday to the office just to get the job done with her husband. She got a babysitter for her daughter, and like she came, and that is amazing. And so, again, hiring based off of who they are. And a side note, why am I there? It's a Saturday, and so I think this is like a side that I do want to make is they know that I'm working very hard, and I was already at the office for 2 hours before she even showed up on Saturday. I don't go every Saturday. Please know that. But I mean, they just know. And this is the third example. This is Laura, and we were hiring about 2 months ago a pediatric nurse because we welcomed a pediatric nurse practitioner in our office, and we were having a hard time hiring somebody because high standards, and she did not make the first or second cut when we were going through all the applications and resumes. And then through some cool experiences, her resume landed back on our desks, and we started talking, and she was very sick as a child, lots of complications. She's lost about 70% of her hearing because of some of these complications. And so she had no pediatric experience. She didn't do school for peds or how to do blood work on a child or, things like that. And so that's why she didn't make the first and definitely not the second cut. But she understood and understands so well what it is to be sick as a child and as an adult, what it is to have parents or to be parents to a child who is ill chronically. And so she can really see those people for who they are. And so now she is, she's been our pediatric nurse for 5 weeks, and she's already got 75 patients in the first 5 weeks, and had shout outs on Google reviews, and just like doing awesome. And she has a really cool stethoscope. And it's just really cool. And those are the things that I want to talk about. And I want to open this up to a Q&A because we're in the infancy of direct primary care, and I want to make this practical for everybody in the room. But in closing for this part, why does this work? It's because, for many reasons. If you plant a good seed, you get good fruit. But more than that, if you see them as some kind of credential, a certification, an award, that's what they did and the paper they got. But when you look at them for their ideals and their values, you see them as a person. And that's what creates such a strong relationship and ability for them to succeed. And so that's what I wanted to talk about. Thank you. And so now we have a Q&A. We've got a few minutes. This was planned, and so I guess they're going to have a mic runner. And so if you just want to raise your hand, we'll run a mic to you, and we'll go from there. But anything leadership? Yeah.
I love your talk. I'm Nick from DPC. You talked about hiring your values. You're running a business. You have to do things really quickly.
Yeah.
What's the fastest way to figure out if someone aligns with your values?
Okay, fastest way to figure out if somebody aligns with your values. That is a great question because the second nurse I hired, I interviewed 39 people. That is demoralizing. And because it takes a lot, And so the fastest way is, one, you know who you are, you figure out your why, what gets you up in the morning really early without an alarm clock and gets you excited, and then communicate the crap out of that to everybody you talk to, and they will come to you. And I remember in high school, I went to, something in the mall, I think it's called Journey, the like store, and they had, it was kind of funny, they had a goth in a box, and they had, it was like clothes and like something up for their neck, and then they had a skater in a box, and they had like all the clothes and everything. And so like there are cues that we send out to the world, maybe not a skater in a box, sort of what you wear, but like what you talk about, what gets you excited, and those people will come to you. And then the first question that helps me tease out a lot is, tell me what you know about my practice. And that is gold right there. Tell me what you know about my practice, because there's a lot of people that'll just say like, hey, I'm a hard worker and this and that about me, talking about, themselves, the nurse or whomever. But if you can say, why do you want to join my practice? Because I'm different for the sake of being better. Why does that appeal to you? Great question.
I'm fortunate enough to have a staff like yours in a small town where they do a lot of things around town that they really aren't paid for. We had some talks previously about boundaries, and I worry a little bit about encouraging them to take ownership over the community and the practice, but still going so far that they aren't completely following those boundaries. So how do you balance those things?
Well, that's a great question. How do you balance their boundaries a little bit? And so, believe it or not, I have 50 slides on this sucker, and I only went through like 7 of them, or 13, I think. And so, you're working to hire smart people. So you bring that to their attention and say, what do you want to do with this? How do you want to approach this? Put it in their box, because their level of comfort is different than yours. For my nurse practitioner, Diane, she would bleed for a patient and be happy to do it. Somebody else may not be. And but that's her comfort level, and that's what she wants to do. So going back to this phrase I'm going to repeat 1,000,000 times, is like, hire excellent people and then put the ball in their court. So another couple, yeah.
Hey, good morning. Words are important, right? What we call people. So I always struggle. I'm not the physician. My spouse is. And all the time, she likes to call people her staff. And I always correct and say, they're your colleagues. And even you said, my personal assistant, my RN. If you want people to act like a team, I think we have to call people your colleagues if you want them to be part of a team.
Okay.
But I just think this is endemic in medicine because it's traditionally hierarchical. And if you want people to act like a team, you got to use the right words. So just a comment.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, the way we're trained in medical school, I mean, you walk into an operating room, we know who the boss at the moment is. It's the surgeon, and maybe second to that is, whoever else, depending on the personality of the surgeon, maybe. And so, but when we're in medicine, in the way that we are now, we don't have that. And so that's beautiful. Yes. Where are we at? That is the most dedicated hand raising. Like, that is all the way up.
This is a great talk, thank you very much. Question for you, I hear some back and forth on this, and what is your take on hiring patients? I'm okay with it, I'm curious to see how you feel about it.
Yeah, so Beth is also a patient. She's the redhead that came in last week. And for a while, half of my staff ended up becoming patients because they understood the model so well. I literally talked to attorneys about this, like paid them to have a conversation to get real legal advice. Where's the line? How far do we need to be away from it realistically? Things like that. And from a legal standpoint, it's very okay. Actually, it's very, very okay. And it depends on the patient. There are many patients that I would never feel comfortable with that. But those who really understand and share values, it's been wonderful. And also to them, I feel it's important to approach them as their physician occasionally, because they will see you as, the boss, and to make sure that they get their annual physicals, etc., med refills, all the things, follow up like you would everybody else, because sometimes they'll be like, yeah, I'll see her in the office, so I can just be like, hey, how's that rash? You know, that's not appropriate. But when you treat them like a patient and make sure you keep those boundaries, it's been a beautiful thing for us. But it is fraught with some risk. Yes, sir.
Once you've recognized you've made a bad
A little louder.
once you've made certain that you have
Go ahead and use the mic.
Good morning. If you've recognized that you've made a bad hire pretty quickly after you've done it, and they don't share your values or your determination, what is your conversation like about termination?
Beautiful. So what is your conversation like if you have made a bad hire? It is so hard to be able to recognize if somebody's a good hire or a bad hire when you do a couple interviews. We do 3 interviews. We have the nurse interview them, we have me interview them, and then they spend a half day at our office so we can see them. That last step is crucial, because you'd be like, no, they actually don't know how to use the internet. Which has happened. I'm like, oh my gosh, you were so nice, but if you haven't learned now, we're just going to swipe left. And so, you need, this is my opinion, pay people more than other people in town do. Reduce the barriers for getting really good people. And then you are paying them more, they recognize that, they know where they came from a pay standpoint. And this is huge. If you should want to write anything down, write this down. Meet with every staff member every single month. Go ahead and put it on your calendar for the next 2 years. Like, I have everybody, if you look at my calendar, it's like chat with Carrie, and then hers, in her color, it says chat with Dr. A. And then the next day, it's chat with Monica. And, you know, and it's huge because then you have those incremental conversations, and that opens it up, and they usually fire themselves. Monthly meetings, huge. And you gotta write it down or it's not gonna happen.
So I'm not DPC, I'm a sales guy.
Okay.
And not to pitch, but I've had a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
Some really good bosses, some real bad ones. I don't know you, but you have this aura about you that people want to work with you. So thank you for showing your spirit.
Oh, that's it. Thank you.